Hey guys, first regardsman, and today I'm here with Jeficus to talk about the response to our recent video explaining the leveling grind in Space Marine 2 and why it currently sucks and why the prestige system might need a rework. Now, here on Reddit, people did actually ask about our thoughts or the Redditors' thoughts on the video we made here. This had about 300 upvotes, so usually I wouldn't respond to a Reddit post like this, but I am interested to see what people have to say because the whole point of that video is to get people to actually start talking about this and just get a general squeaky wheel going towards Saber about actually changing the leveling system because we think it is currently the worst portion of Space Marine 2. Is that not incorrect, Jeff?
No, I absolutely agree, and I'm also really glad that this was kind of a good conversation starter, and I'm glad that you guys, the community, are kind of taking it to Reddit, to the forums, etc., to try to notify Saber that this is a major issue, and I believe it is, so I'm
So
happy.
here we had a TLDR. Obviously, we're going to post the actual link to the video we made up here. If you want to look at the Reddit post, we'll also put that in the description. Now, here in the actual comments, which is what I really want to talk about here, Aki the Awesome says they are 100% right about needing a reallocation of specific perks to be earlier. For example, Assault, in my eyes, doesn't feel like Assault until like level 23. Some of the transformational dynamic perks need to be moved way earlier in the leveling process. That's true regardless of the prestige system. I 100% agree with this comment. A big part of the leveling experience, especially for Assault, is that perks in Space Marine 2 are so fundamental to some of the builds. Things like Tactical Prowess,
Oh
Zone
yeah.
Impact Vanguard, things like Zealous Blow. They just don't let your builds function without these perks at times. Some weapons feel awful. So I'm kind of curious to see what you think about this comment here, Jeff. I'll read over some of the other ones here in a second.
So if Saber isn't going to rework the prestige system from the ground up, this is probably the best way to address it, is to move a lot of those fundamental perks to the beginning of the tree just so that the player can lock them up right away. It only takes one absolute run to get around 7 or 8 levels right off the bat, especially if you get the gene seed. And so unlocking basically your entire class's kit right off the bat would be a really good way to keep the momentum for the prestige system going. This would be a really quick and easy band-aid fix, I think.
Yeah, a band-aid fix, I think, would be like the most we can really expect from Saber in a lot of cases. I doubt they'll
Mhm.
ever remove the prestige system as it currently stands, like at all. But really, a big issue is they had a poll previously talking about this. We're going to do a comment about that I read previously that they did ask people about the prestige grind, and people said they didn't like it. They didn't really change much, which does blow. Now, Ollie Law says it does suck when prestiging the class if you're serious about doing it quickly. You literally get one op per prestige, but the full perks of the class of a GIMP build. This is definitely true. You basically have to play like one
Oh,
fun
yeah.
operation like per prestige every single time if you're going all the way to 4. That was like the least fun part of prestiging for me, and that was in an easier version of the game. Like, you gotta think now, absolute difficulty at the time of prestige and not have double boss spawns, it actually takes you longer now unless you're playing the siege mode, and nobody wants to sit there for like waves 1 through 5 siege all the time. It also says Assault is the worst case, where the playstyles between ground pound versus dodge builds are completely different, but you can't really play either properly until high levels. I'm actually glad they brought this up because the commitment perk that actually allows the Wings of Flame build to function comes at the very end of your prestige grind, and you can't use Wings of Flame properly at all up until that point. Like, you're just gonna be losing your jump pack all the time. It feels terrible. And then for like Zealous Blow ground pound builds, that also comes at the end at like level 23. It's a pretty ridiculous system. Now here, Extra Wave says, I still maintain Assault is the most weird class in the game and the only bone that feels so or the only one that feels so incredibly weak and dog shit at a baseline level. It's not even funny. At full level, it's the most fun class in the game. If you want to prestige it, you ain't having fun with the class until you invest 24 plus hours into it. I actually think this is true. I
Yep.
feel like Bulwark is just a strictly better version of Assault for like 99% of melee weapons right now. It's pretty
Well, you
hilarious.
also get something like intimidating aura like right away, like pretty early
Oh
on in the
yeah.
tree, and intimidating aura will carry Bulwark through basically any difficulty. Sniper is also a victim of this because you get Pattern of Excellence at level 25, and so your way to clear like AOE clear Majoris enemies or Minoris enemies just doesn't exist until level 25. And so you just can't reliably play as a sniper until you're all the way maxed out, or unless you decide to gimp yourself and don't go for any of the prestige perks.
That is
So
true.
you're not resetting.
And a huge issue, this wasn't so much of an issue at the initial onset of Prestige because that was like the only thing to do in the game. But now we have heroic weapons. Now there's so much extra content, like hard stratagems that people want to complete, that the leveling system is seriously becoming like one of the #1 focal points of like problems a lot of new players are having. I get asked this question all the time in like stream chats and comment sections about like, what's the fastest way to level? And I actually feel bad telling them like, all right, you just have to grind those operations you don't want to grind, or you have to do siege, and those are your two options. Or like, if you want to get all the prestige perks. And the natural next question after that is like, are the prestige perks worth it? And yes, they are actually fundamental to making your classes function on certain operations, especially in the actual siege mode, which does need to rework. But either way, having these prestige perks be so mandatory to some of the class functionality, especially with things like Bolt Sniper barely working versatile precision without versatile precision for that ammo economy, it's kind of ridiculous that like it's just taking them this long to rework it whatsoever. I would say, we mentioned this before in the actual video, that having a like weekend that has double XP or things like this, kind of like what Battlefront 2 does on Wednesdays, triple XP, would definitely help quite a bit. But we're already kind of dealing with like a FOMO event right now, the Infiltrator helmet, which has people playing a mission that actually takes pretty long. And people are still going to be leveling up off of that. But as far as the overall leveling experience goes, it is so off-putting for new players. And Space Marine 2, it keeps getting new players back because the game is pretty fun, but it is quite hard here. Now, Sarkana says, the whole process blows. I main Bulwark, and it equally sucks to get the perks everyone's waiting for at, I think, 23. Use it for one map, then go right back to suck work again. All right, this might be like a little incorrect. Intimating Aura can definitely carry you through the entire thing. But Invigorating Icon,
I see what he's saying, though. I see what he's saying.
He wants the Invigorating Icon. I can definitely understand that. I know some Bulwark players think it's like properly mandatory to have that perk, and I can't really blame them for it. Now, next we have Skeleho says, I also think the prestige perks for some classes are incredibly underwhelming. Sniper and Tactical have some great prestige perks, but heavy. Man, this is definitely true. I'm actually glad this guy brought this up, Jeff. We didn't really talk about this in the initial video, that the prestige perks, there are some non-choices here where it's like, okay, you're just going to take Acuity if you have a bolt weapon on the Tactical. I think Sniper has the best setup perk tree out of all the prestige perk trees, but it's still kind of underwhelming to have these like 7 perks to choose from. Like, I don't know why it couldn't be 10. Like, there are a ton of other ones to choose from. Like, 7 is just not a lot when you can pick 4. So I'm kind of curious to see what you think about that.
I think that I actually don't really like the tactical perks too much. I think that for tactical, you've got maybe 1 or 2 good perks, and then the other ones aren't really as exciting. Sniper and Vanguard are good cases for great prestige perks because you kind of look forward to every prestige. Like, for example, a sniper that has versatile precision versus one who doesn't have one, there's a massive difference in ammo economy. And when you take a sniper with versatile precision or a tactical with, what is it called, Emperor's Vengeance, just the normal perk from their tree, which gives them all the ammo in the world, basically they no longer have to spend their requisition points on ammo, which means that it's opened up for things like the Dreadnought, things like having the heavy bot out at all times. It's a really big difference maker. It's a huge difference maker for just gameplay in general. And so, yeah, they need to tackle some of the perks that some of these different classes have access to. I think heavy is probably the most boring. To me, tactical is the most boring. And then assault is boring, but it's reliable in some cases. Like, for example, having the build where you can get 3 seconds of invulnerability while you are charging your ground pound. That is really fun to do.
Yeah.
But then there are also some underwhelming ones in there. I don't like how they nerfed the range damage per siege perk. I don't like how they redistributed that, especially since right after that, they came out with the perk that gives you more or better contested health regeneration.
Now, if I remember correctly, that was in the PTS, and they did like 1 pass in the PTS. A lot of people complained about Adrenaline Boost not being on Assault. Like, originally, they gave Indomitable Spirit to Assault, which is just like the no knockback on Gunstrike, instead of Adrenaline Boost, which is the no knockback on Parry and Dodge, which is kind of insane that they didn't give him the initial like no knockback. He lacked no knockback for like 90% of the game up in like the first year, which is kind of insane to think. But that was like the one major pass they did. That was like the best pass. They nerfed some other perks, and they added in the hone precision to heavy at some point. But overall, it feels like the prestige perks have been completely neglected since they initially added them. And on like the
Mhm.
PTS is like the only time they did any major changes. I don't know why it takes so long for like those changes. I mean, there must be like a tremendous amount of overhead at Saber, or they just don't really care that much. Either way,
Yeah,
it feels pretty bad right now. Now, next
I agree
up,
with Skelehose for sure.
oh yeah, this was definitely a good thing to bring up that we forgot to talk
Yeah.
about before. Nico Wu says another thing to take in note regarding promotions. I don't understand why the XP increase doesn't apply to weapon level. I managed to get
True.
max prestige with all classes. I'm doing weapon grind, but I've noticed that weapons are unaffected at all by XP buffs from any prestige.
True.
I can see how it can be used the wrong way of playing only your max prestige class to level up weapons, but with the current system, it just encourages an extremely slow grind where I have to play 8 ruthless matches per weapon in purple rarity to get them maxed out. It's just boring. This is actually a great point because, let's say if you don't play this game a ton, you're just going to be playing the lower level matches like ruthless to actually level up your
Mhm.
guns. Like, not everyone's going to be going to like hard siege to get the max XP rate for their green weapon. A lot of players will just die, and people tell me this of like, I can't solo this. I don't know how to play the game, especially if you're new. You're not gonna be able to do that, so it takes even longer. That's actually a great point they brought up, that like the weapon XP grind is just kind of stupid in this game. You can max them out with things like armory data, but either way, you still have to get XP for things like that, and it just doesn't feel very good. It doesn't carry over in a lot of cases, which is very annoying. He also says, edit, I got so busy yapping about the weapon XP that I forgot to say something about the prestige. This prestige system sucks purely because of the level restart. The easiest fix would just be to reach max level, and once you unlock prestige, just have prestige bar fill up to unlock the 4 upgrades. Everything stays the
Yep.
same, and it no longer forces you to be level 1 and grind all the way back every single time. I agree with this. I've had people tell me before that like, oh, there's no point in prestiging if you don't lose all your perks. I'm like, that's the dumbest take I've ever heard, in my opinion.
That's not true. It's also more, again, indicative of a true level system instead of a prestige system. But still, I think that it's still an infinitely better system because once your class feels a certain way, you don't really want to regress, especially when you're used to playing harder difficulty.
Especially in a
So
horde
I
shooter.
definitely agree with Nikowu here. Nick Owu. Oh, geez.
Nick Owu.
And in both of these points here, I'd even take it a step further and say that whenever you prestige, that XP increase should not only affect your weapons, it should affect your entire account. It should affect the other classes on your account and basically get it to the point where, if you're prestiging your very last class and you're prestige 4 on every other class, you're basically instantly leveling up your weapon and maybe even getting like 20 levels worth of XP on an absolute operation because you have all these accumulating XP buffs on your account, especially during like a double XP weekend or something like that. So I definitely agree here, and I think we should take it a step further.
Yeah, I don't think that Space Marine 2 is a game that actually has enough rewards to justify you releveling over and over and over again.
No,
Like, it already
no.
kind of sucks in a game like Call of Duty, I brought up before, where, like, because Prestige, when most people think Prestige, at least when I think Prestige, I think back to, like, Modern Warfare 2, or, like, even Call of Duty 4. And Prestige was like, okay, you're going back through the whole leveling process again in Call of Duty, but there are so many things to unlock in that game that you are experiencing new weapons all the time. In this game, the weapons are quite limited. The perk trees are especially limited. I think the worst part about Space Marine 2 currently, outside of bugs, is the leveling system and the perk trees in general. Like, a lot of the things in this game are just non-choices, and having you basically go back through to unlock like the one perk you want in a row, because that's the big issue here. Like, if all of the build perks or like all the perks in the rows were quite equivalent, it wouldn't be that big of a problem. But unfortunately, in most of the perk trees in Space Marine 2, there's like one good option and then like one mediocre one and like one outright bad one. So it's a pretty big issue here. And now
Well,
Octane is,
you brought up Call of Duty, dude. I think
yeah.
that there's a huge difference between prestiging in a PvP game and prestiging in a PvE game. Because in a PvP game, whenever you play against another player, like an enemy player, it's going to be a different experience every single time because no two players are ever the same. But we have 10 operations and one siege map. The experience is basically going to be the same across those 11 activities or so, or I guess realistically 2 activities, basically the entire time, especially because there are no permutations in the levels. The stratagems are supposed to be the permutations, right? And so
Yeah.
you're gonna run out of variety extremely quickly. And when you're talking about how many levels you have to grind for prestige, I believe it's 125 times 6. That's
It's
insane
a
for
lot.
basically what is the equivalent of 11 maps, 11 missions. Like,
Yeah,
think about
there's
that.
not a lot of variety in this game as far as like the missions
That's a
go.
massive turnoff for a lot of people. So I don't blame new players when they look at what they have to grind and go, yeah, maybe this isn't for me. Like
Yeah,
maybe
it's
this
definitely gonna
isn't
be
for me.
off-putting. Like, I really do think that like Saber is shooting themselves in the foot by not addressing this at all and not buffing XP rates at all, because like that's the first thing your players are gonna be interacting with after like they level up. The amount like level 25 players that are unprestige that have asked me, should I prestige? Is it worth it? And have to like shamefully go and be like, oh god, I have to do all of this. It feels awful every time. I feel bad for telling them, to be honest. Now, Octaneous Melody says, definitely here, definitely not the Inquisition. Top 1% commenter. This guy likes this game. In terms of prestige, they could have just done it like Deep Rock Galactic promotion system. You sacrifice currency and I think resources to get the next prestige, but you keep everything you've earned. A lot of us advocated for that, and it was one of the most upvoted topics on the PTS. But I knew it would fall on deaf ears. It is what it is. I'm glad I got my grinding out of the way before Absolute 2.0 rolled around. This is a great point. Like, it's,
this guy knows. Yeah,
it got harder. I got way harder to actually level up, and that's why
Melody is a G. Octaneous Melody knows.
That's why he's a top 1% commenter. He's been in this game since the beginning. They work on so many games a year that they'll never give this game the resources it deserves. They know things like not having class duplicates similar to World War Z and Evil Dead has caused issues and will cause more. In a recent interview, a dev asked about the problems with Tech Marine will cause for matchmaking, and they said, I mean, there's no avoiding it, is there? I'm sure that will be the case. I'm sure there'll be some squabbling, but yeah, I guess it'll even itself out. Yeah, they don't give a shit. Like, that's the truth.
That is a really bad response. All they need to do for this, they don't even have to change the game at a fundamental level. Just create an event when the Tech Marine comes out where people can double up on classes. Let people test it. Let your players test it. Let people level up Tech Marine all at the same time and see if the community likes it. If they like it, then implement it.
Yeah.
That's really all there is to it.
They say, gee, thanks. Can't wait to solo level with bots. The Dark Tide completely avoid this bullshit so everyone can play what they want without restrictions.
Yeah.
Edit for anyone interested. This is the link to the interview. It talks about the Tech Marine future of the game. Now, the guy who actually made this interview did email me. It was a great interview, so you guys should check that out. I'll probably put this link in the description if I remember to. But it's definitely a good comment here for sure. 100 upvotes. People are very engaged on this topic, which is good to see.
Oh, Octaneous Melody. I will say, in retort with Darktide, you can't single player though. You can't play single player. That's the one bad thing about Darktide. I actually think the reason why they're trying to push out the bot rework for Space Marine 2 in patch 11 is because they know a lot of people are just going to level up by themselves on Tech Marine. Yep. And so they're going to want to have improved bots to take with them into Absolute so they can solo. But one thing I will say is that that's bad for the game. I think it's bad for the game. I think that when you encourage people to be less social, that is bad for the game.
Oh, yeah. Especially in a game like Space Marine 2, where like 99% of it is for the Emperor and like calling each other brother.
Exactly.
And this is a god awful response. Like, I'm amazed that a game director would even say that as actual response to this. But either way, next we have Crimson Sorrow saying, Saber is never going to do it. They are never going to retract the leveling system for prestiging. They had the chance. They asked people on their own forums. They got their answers was overwhelming in favor of not resetting the prestige, and they ignored it completely. It is kind of absurd because Saber is strange in that they do listen to people, but they don't seem to listen on like some very strange, like they're very set in their ways, I should say. Like some of the balancing decisions they make, they feel so like it has to be this way, guys. Like if we change it, it would obviously be broken, but like we already have broken classes in this game. We already have things like Bulwark is shield bashed now. There's like totally OP and like all these other balancing problems where like Assault is kind of left behind, where classes like Heavy and Bulwark have been strong since the game came out.
Yeah, dude, can we talk about that for a second? Why does Bulwark get to use shield bash all the time, but the Assault can't use ground pound all the time when they basically do comparable damage at this point and have comparable effectiveness?
Arguably,
like I think that's absurd.
Shield bash is arguably better for the animation cancel. And like on a note of animation cancel, I've seen people talk about the fact that jump pack dash should auto cancel out of your like whatever movement you're doing. You feel 10 times better, and like if commitment was perfectly built into there, you would also have like, you know, the refund your jump pack on perfect dodge or perfect jump pack dodge. Then you have a bit of a skill cap in there on top of an animation cancel, because in theory animation cancels like Bulwark, like the or like an assault jump pack like that, they would be some of the highest skill cap things in this game if the content like properly provided a challenge for them. Now, in the case of Bulwark, his shield rush is totally OP. His shield bash with all like the buff block power axe synergy and things like that, on top of overcharge being a multiplicative damage increase, is kind of overpowered as well right now. Bulwark is better for basically every single melee weapon in the game, and Assault has been left behind and literally has a bugged perk that is the exact same perk that the the Bulwark gets for a prestige perk with overcharge, but his actually works on things like the Power Fist. It works on things like Full Throttle and all these other heavy attacks. And the only thing that's actually functioning on the Assault right now for overcharge is the Ground Slam on the Thunderhammer or like some other things. And it's pretty ridiculous they've kept it that way. But I definitely agree with this. I'm like, that's a bit of a tangent, but like, yeah, it is kind of ridiculous how much Saber does just kind of like ignore things in like the name of their own balancing decisions that don't make a lot of sense if you actually play their game a lot. Now the
My hopium for that comment is that Saber is actually taking notes, and they apply this in Space Marine 3. But that's hopium. That's pure hopium.
That is
I've
pure
no
hopium.
idea what their development process is like in the background. So,
all right, so for the final thing we'll talk about here, let's go a long one. And the Supa Dupa Lupa says the prestige system resetting perks was always dumb, as it forces you to either lower difficulty or become a liability for others to carry. Weapons, the annoying thing is the amount of XP lost because there was a cap until you use armory data, and no can advance for if you finish it or not mid-mission. So if you are new and trying to optimize leveling, this becomes a real chore. And this is the fundamental problem. Optimizing leveling is the most boring part of like every video game ever. I don't know why. Like it sucks in Borderlands. Like every time there's like some massive grind you have to do to get like 5 new perks you need, it doesn't feel like content. It feels like you're actually just beating your head against a brick wall. And in this game especially, like I almost fell asleep on the stream I did getting all these prestige levels up because it was that boring. It took me like 10 hours straight, and it was awful. And I was not a big fan of that at all. And it's still the worst experience I've had in this game in a very long time. So,
well, it's just so crazy, right? Because if you're really trying to be optimal and you're prestige level, so you're level 24, prestige 3, then you could just go run a ruthless or substantial even in order to get to level 25. And it's the exact same with your weapons. If you're on the verge of getting into relic tier, then you could lower the difficulty because you only need a certain amount of XP, and you know that any excess XP won't carry over. And so why doesn't the excess XP carry over? Like that would be a good place to start for basically both systems, for both progression systems.
That's definitely a good idea. Yeah, having it actually carry over would be like a step 1 for sure. We'll actually read this one's last one. Slutty McFucks a lot, Black Templar, of course. Top 1% commenter says, just like that on a community survey, everyone said they wouldn't like it if Prestige reset your perks, and naturally Save made sure your perks reset. I don't know why they thought people would want to go back to being underleveled. I literally hate heavy until the last few levels. Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad to see the engagement on this. I'll say the fact they put out a community survey and ignored it is like peak hubris of a game dev, in my opinion. But obviously we can't read through all of these, and I think that's actually a pretty good place to stop. But my god, there are a lot of people who have some very strong, the dissertations are glorious. See, this was kind of the point of why we made that video in the first place, is to get people talking about this, because Saber does listen, and Saber is a company that will actually change things in like within a week if the outcry is loud enough. And that happened in the Lethal update. When Tight Formation was added, they changed that shit in a week. They buffed the bolters. They changed it in a week. It was the fastest patch we've ever gotten in this game, I'm pretty sure. And it's because people were pissed. And if you talk to Saber, like obviously don't be, super derogatory towards them and just be rude constantly. Like just calling them stupid isn't really gonna help. But if we bring up proper complaints and we keep being a squeaky wheel, they will listen eventually. And that is pretty much all I have to say on this one. It's good to see all these comments here. People brought up points we definitely didn't in our video. Do you have any last thoughts, Jeff? Any of this?
I think the last thing that I have to say is that the end game for me, for the entire point of this, is I want Space Marine 2 to be as fun as possible for new players, because I want more people to play this game, because I want Space Marine 3 to be just the ultimate epic Warhammer 40k gaming experience. And so I don't want Space Marine 2 to be in a situation in a year or 2 years where they can't sell cosmetic packs because new players find the game unapproachable. They lose funding. Space Marine 3 is not as good as it could possibly be.
Especially for a game that's casual.
That is my fear for all of this, is that it's not affecting us right now as veteran players because we've been playing the game, so our prestige level is there, our accolade grind is there. But if we don't address the grind right now, new players will not pick this game up. Especially the current 40k community that is a bit more casual when it comes to gaming.
I will say, on the note of casual gaming, I don't think this game being casual is a slight against it at all. I think it's actually amazing. It makes it very easy again to
It's
be
a
40k
benefit. Yeah.
into the 40k universe as a whole. I think this game is like one of the perfect gateways for 40k. A lot of people got into 40k purely off this game. So you want as many new players as possible if you want like 40k to grow. And this is like this game being casual and having like a pretty fun gameplay loop is great, but having this poor leveling experience can really drive players away, and driving players away from this game is potentially driving them away from 40k in general, and I don't think that's a good thing. I'm glad people brought up some great points here, and I think that is everything we have to say on this one. I was not expecting such an enormous response to that video we made, but I'm glad to see that people agree the leveling experience in this game sucks ass, and it definitely needs to have like a bit of a rework in some cases. And as always, guys, if you like content like this, subscribe for more, and check out Jeficus' channel. He also makes amazing Darktide, Space Marine 2 content, and Vermintide content.
The Emperor protects.